Welcome to Sync Up, a show about OneDrive, the intelligent files app for Microsoft 365. We are your hosts, Ankita and Jason Moore. I'm Ankita Kirti, Product Manager on the OneDrive team.
And I'm Jason Moore, Crew Program Manager for OneDrive. This show will take you behind the scenes of OneDrive, shedding light on how OneDrive connects you to all of your files in Microsoft 365 so you can share and work together from anywhere while protecting your work from accidental loss and malicious attacks.
Today, we are excited to have on the show Erdina Francillon to talk about remote learning and the back-to-school experience with OneDrive and Microsoft 365. Before we begin, we would also like to thank you for the past 1 year of Sync Up. This is our 12th episode, so our 1 year anniversary. Happy 1 year anniversary, Jason.
Happy 1 year anniversary, Ankita. It's awesome that we've been able to do this for a full year together. I'm so excited. Thank you for being an amazing co-host.
You too.
And for those of you listening, don't go away because we got another great show for you today.
Woohoo! So returning to school after summer is a pretty exciting time of the year, but this year, getting back to school will look and feel very different for students, their families, and of course the teachers. For some, going back to school will mean teaching or attending classes online from their homes. For others, it will be splitting between remote learning and physical classrooms. Either way, a top priority for teachers and school admins is helping students stay connected and engaged in what they are learning. So today, we are going to dig deep into remote learning and how OneDrive and Teams and Microsoft 365 plays an important role in empowering teachers, students, and admins to communicate broadly, share and find information and assignments quickly and easily, and collaborate seamlessly. With that, I'll hand over to Jason to introduce our guest today.
Thanks, Ankita. Our guest today is Erdina Francillon, an M365 Education Specialist who supports universities and school districts across the Mid-Atlantic with their modern work and learning needs from identity, security, collaboration, automation, and of course, storage. She loves helping customers envision the future of work. Welcome to the show, Erdina. We're really glad to have you.
Hey there, I'm happy to be here.
Before we dig deep into technical stuff, Erdina, I really wanted to know how your clients are doing during these challenging times and how are they generally coping to the shift to remote learning?
I think like with every industry, it's been extremely challenging. I would argue that in education, they've probably felt the brunt of it. There were many schools, education still remains a very face-to-face business, very highly, many school districts where many of their processes are very paper oriented, and to overnight, right, have school districts receive a call, IT directors receive a call and say, what is our plan to go remote? Do we have the security in place? Do we have the identities in place? Do we have the tools in place? It's been extremely stressful, I think, for many of my customers, but it's been amazing to see how they have navigated asking new questions and answering new challenges around how do we help students to focus in what we call, from a pedagogy perspective, deep learning when they're home and they're in the middle, their family and the nation is in the middle of a pandemic. And so I think when I think through the last couple of months, it's kind of been an evolution, right, of just pure chaos and disruption, and then looking at, okay, what are the tools that are available from identity and meetings, right? I think when this first started, everyone thought, okay, we just need to have meetings. We just need to throw our curriculum into a document, right? And have our teachers just sort of reading off of that document. And I think quickly we learned and saw the disengagement from students. And now coming into this second phase of the disruption of how do we really help schools envision that remote learning is not just a meeting. It's not just about throwing documents in a central place, but it's really about the flow of information and making sure that a class is a lot more self-service and a lot more self-led and student-led than ever before. It's been a journey, and I think it's going to continue to be a challenging journey, but it's been really inspiring to see how schools have reimagined how students can learn together, even if they're not in a in-person environment.
I love the way you talked about all of those different pieces kind of coming together and then this challenge that sits in front of them. As you think about the transition to remote or to hybrid learning, right, depending on the situation, one of the things that we kind of course, naturally assume is that technology is going to play this very central and critical role for teachers as well as students, as well as parents, in making sure that they're connected. And we've heard a lot of exciting success stories with how the role of Teams has been one of those, Microsoft Teams has been one of those examples of technology playing a critical role during this shift. What has the experience been for you in terms of, as you've seen it through the lens of so many customers?
Yeah, I think our customers, this was a great reminder that hybrid learning is the future. And it's also accessible for everyone. And I think school districts that had that trepidation before of, well, we don't have the time, we don't have the right staff, we don't have the capabilities, or it's just not an immediate priority in this year's school cycle. COVID sort of swung the pendulum in the other direction of customers that perhaps we had been working with for a couple of years, trying to convince them that now they were coming and knocking on our door. Like, remember that Teams thing? I'd really like to take another look. And can we turn that on tomorrow? It's a fun time to be in education. It's an exciting time despite the unfortunate circumstances. And I call remote learning the great equalizer, because whether you were in a fluent district or a district in an economically challenged community, you needed to ask the same questions and were caught just as off guard as others. And so, I think helping our customers understand that we're so excited for this pandemic to be over, but that team still has a role to play. And that, again, it's so much more, remote learning is so much more than just a meeting, especially in the higher education space as well, that we're seeing that, hey, students don't want to go back and have a lecture if it doesn't feel somewhat special, if it doesn't somewhat replicate the goodness and the awesomeness that they felt within those halls. It's more than just about just turning on your camera and talking. It's about having a real strategy and a real collaboration space where that culture can live. And so that's where Teams is unique, and where we've really been able to help schools not only avoid missing any critical days in their school year, but also maintain that sense of togetherness and reduce chaos and confusion of, where do I go for this? Where do I go for that? That you have this platform where it's a single pane where all of your great tools live together. So it's also been exciting to see people rediscover everything that M365 offer in Teams.
Do you have a good example of something that people kind of been like, oh my gosh, this is a killer thing for being able to be successful in school that maybe they hadn't been paying attention to or forgotten about?
Yeah, I think within education, immersive reader and equity are a huge part of our focus in reaching students who have either reading disabilities, right, or just some of us, our eyes get tired, right, and we need a different way of sort of viewing information. And so the fact that immersive reader is built within Teams, built within all our M365 tools, the fact that there's translation built into these tools, and that you could have a Teams community for parents or students within different languages, right? And that's immediately, transcribed and translated. I think that those things, I think the beauty of Teams is that perhaps that student or that administrator, right, who felt left out because they missed a day of work or they missed a meeting or they missed a day of class, now being able to come in and be a part of a conversation. And I think it's that no one should feel left out, no matter if, you're going through a very difficult time at home, you missed a session, you missed a class, but that you can come in and still be a part of that conversation. I think that's, and whether English is your first language, whether you're just shy, I think what we're doing also with reactions in Teams has been really great to see schools using that to sort of measure sentiment of how students are feeling for the day. We have a lot of schools who are very excited about that as well, because sometimes you want to be a part of the conversation, but you don't actually want to speak, whether it's through different language or different modes of communication, to still have presence in the conversation and still have measured participation, right? Even when we look at insights in Teams for a teacher to measure student engagement, right? It's not just measuring the traditional things of, did you turn in the assignment? It's helping teachers measure interactivity, chat messages, responses, right? That this person, while they may not be the loudest voice in the room, they're still very much engaged in this community and helping others learn. And I think those have been some of the really exciting things about remote learning that are going to stick even when we're back in the classroom, of making sure we measure success in different ways for engagement and learning.
That's great. I'm so proud of the role Teams is playing in remote learning and remote working, actually. And that's a great picture that you painted, Erdina. Thanks so much. Shifting gears a little, just recollecting one of our previous conversations that we've had about how OneDrive plays a role in remote learning. You gave a great analogy of OneDrive serving as the virtual files cabinet for an educator. I would like to explore a little more and understand from you how OneDrive and SharePoint also to some extent can help teachers and students organize and find their files, assignments, research projects, etc.
Yeah, so I think everyone has an emotional, hopefully positive memory of coming in your K through 12 time, right? The first day of school, and I loved how educators put so much thought and work into the organization of the classroom, right? So I always give the analogy that Teams is your virtual classroom, right? And you need to build it so that students know, okay, this is the math corner, this is the reading corner, this is where I go for fun, this is where I go for questions. But then, OneDrive is that virtual file cabinet that teachers reorganize, they share information with each other, they clean it out at the end of a semester or a school year. They archive things, they retire some files. So I think it's been really, I would say OneDrive is where we continue to have the most opportunity to really help our educators understand, to really continue to see it as that file cabinet and not get overwhelmed or not, to really feel empowered, right? That no matter where they are, that they're able to share, to really see that file cabinet also as their intellectual property, right? For many teachers, right, that physical file cabinet was their pride and joy, their bread and butter, right, that they had developed over so many years. When we're training educators, we really work to help them think through taking ownership of their OneDrive space and their OneDrive sharing best practices and strategy, so that it's really a living, breathing cabinet of work. And then the SharePoint sites, to me, are almost that central maybe chalkboard or whiteboard of where there would be announcements, right? Or, okay, this student, I don't know, competitions, right? But kind of that dashboard, if you will, where this is where we are today. We're winning the pizza contest. We're losing in the pizza contest, whatever. I think with SharePoint being the place, I'm really passionate about making sure that more of our schools are adopting M365 pathways, which is just a sort of more automated SharePoint site that you can pull into Teams as a way, whether you're a school district or whether an independent school, to have that beautiful dashboard, right, where you can sort of keep folks aware of the goals and priorities for the school year, and use it as sort of a motivating place that when they log into Teams, right, they see this beautiful SharePoint site that sort of says, hey, this is where we are, right, as a school or as a district for the month or for the day.
I love that. It's so the metaphors you're using are really compelling because, there's this notion of there's this my space, the OneDrive serves the filing cabinet where I'm kind of pruning and managing and setting it up for me to be a success. And then SharePoint as this opportunity to have kind of the communal aspects of it, the things that bind us together. You mentioned the pizza, thing. That was such a great callback to, how those kind of places and spaces get to be used, right? It's a joint thing. If there's something that we are achieving or doing together or we're all participating in. And I think that maps really, really well.
And I mean, that's the heart of what this time is about, right? And I think the power of all of our tools is helping people, whether and I always say, let's think about quote unquote the lowest common denominator, whether you're a new student, you're a new teacher, you're a new employee, not feeling like you're on an island, right? And think about if you're a new student joining transferring schools for some reason during this pandemic. You never got to meet your classmates face to face. You never got to meet your teacher face to face, right? So using those tools and helping educators understand how to use those tools to create that virtual sense of togetherness is so important. And I think the biggest challenge that we all have, but I think we have lots more to do, but we're doing pretty well in helping folks to navigate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's one of those things that's interesting to watch where we not only can we deal with the current situation, but we can get to better outcomes than before. That notion you were talking about earlier of this hybrid, this infusion of technology changing the way learning can work. I think that's actually one of the really exciting aspects that come out of this. Just kind of getting into more maybe direct terms, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you see OneDrive and SharePoint play a part in enabling the collaboration that students and teachers are now engaged on, right? That maybe has gone from paper and pencil to more of this digital form of sharing and collaboration. How is that kind of working out?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is thinking through how an educator gets prepared and empowering educators to work better together, right? So again, going back to that file cabinet of imagine if all the educators within your grade band, right? You're sharing, you probably already share some type of fundamental framework of how you grade the lessons and the assignments, but there's a unique flavor that each educator brings to his or her classroom. So the idea of using OneDrive to create less barriers between classrooms, right? Now, these are virtual classrooms, so that there should really be a lot more synergy and sharing between educators, between grade bands, or even between grades, right? As you're trying to matriculate students from one grade to another, how do you create more visibility to the educators who are you're passing off your students to make sure the content is seamless grade to grade, that it feels like one overall experience versus I learned this in 5th grade, this in 6th grade, this in 7th grade, and none of it really connected. It kind of did, but it didn't. So I think that's the power of educators collaborating together, within OneDrive. And I also think getting comfortable with student-led learning, right? And that's something where I think with the beauty of OneDrive and Teams, I really encourage our educators to think through, what if a student can just come into an environment, your SharePoint site, your Teams, and they see the entire syllabus for that semester, right? Just like they would within a university course, right? They come in, that they see everything, they have access already to all of the documents, they're able to peruse, and they are able to sort of read ahead, which I think sometimes, especially in K through 12, traditionally has been discouraged. But I think the philosophy behind OneDrive of open information, being able to make certain documents need to know, right? But making other documents open and discoverable, of course, where you can request permission. I think of OneDrive in a Teams environment, in K through 12, almost like unlocking steps, right? Like you've done this assignment, right? Now you can proactively unlock the next assignment, right? By requesting permission, and that you're encouraging students to move ahead and to look at the length of their work and sort of self-navigate, right? Versus always having to go in a very linear approach. So I think those are the things that make OneDrive unique. I always say our culture at Microsoft, right, is all about sort of open source, right? Building on top of each other's ideas. And I think that's very much reflected in how OneDrive's organized and how we continue to encourage educators to use it.
And I think you hit on a couple of really interesting moments there, just kind of talking about the things that are shifts in some ways of thinking about how to use these tools, but also kind of get back to those, you go and see the course syllabus when you get there in person. How do we leverage that accessibility of sharing all that content out and making it discoverable and easy to find? I think it's really interesting to think about how the play of those pieces come together. Ankita, what do you think?
Yeah, I think those were great examples. Leading from this, the shifts that you spoke about, Erdina, what I want to know is, among your customers, how are the IT and admins in these educational institutes perceiving this shift or ramping up to these shifts? I mean, it is obviously encouraging and enhancing productivity once you start allowing collaboration in real time or accessing files from anywhere, or even allowing external sharing where students can, say, share and collaborate on their research projects with students in another geography or in another campus altogether. But these capabilities might also drive some nervousness among IT and admins. Probably they have not done this before, or it's totally new for them. What were some of the guidance that you shared with your customers, and how easy was it for the IT and admins to kind of latch onto this shift?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head. There's discomfort in all change, especially change in the middle of a pandemic. I think that our security messages around, data loss prevention and conditional access continues to resonate with the IT community and so I think a lot of my job and the job of my team is sort of a refresher, right? And of how those things show up within document sharing and assuring them, I think creating the strategy, right? And half of it is reminding them of the features and capabilities that we have within our security suite, but then also guiding them through the re-education of document sharing for their educators and for their leadership and for their staff, and helping them to educate about the philosophy behind our sharing tools. Especially within the higher ed space, there's always lots of concern about, okay, how do we help these mega researchers, right? They're usually the target part of my conversation. And every time I'm talking about OneDrive and document sharing, of how do we, all these people who are collaborating on major research grants with universities across the world, how do we help them to effectively, how do we communicate to them, how do we help them to effectively migrate their data, but again, how do we kind of talk through with them maybe some archiving cleanup that they need to do, right? All without completely disrupting their way of work. But I think between the security protocols that we have in place, the migration, acquisitions that we've made, and just the really change management frameworks that we have, we've been able to successfully help multiple universities sort of migrate over their data and build in a cohesive plan. So, and I would say, that's really, so with higher ed, I think that message is very clear. K through 12, I think it's a different beast. It's a little different, where I don't think documents live as much year over year as in higher ed. So it's not as much of a concern as long as PII information for students is protected. That's really tends to be their largest concern.
It's interesting that you talk about that, because it's one of the things that's fascinating is from the product side has been how much it's helped us make a better product, thinking both about kind of K through 12 and, post high school kind of education. And, you point out righteously, there's different needs, right? There's different kinds of uses that are going to pop through that. At any given level in university, you may have people that have been doing it for a very long time or people that are brand new. And so the longevity is very different. Whereas, in the fifth grade, there's a fifth grade plan that the district will have or the school will have. It's kind of fascinating to see both how these tools, are used across that, but also what is unique and different about it. For me, one of the things that pops is exactly along those lines is kind of the notions of like protecting the privacy of those students and teachers and kind of how all that goes. And that extends through all of Microsoft 365, which is, I think, one of the things that makes it really valuable for people to have confidence in being able to deploy.
Definitely. I mean, we're a leader in this space, and I think that half the time we have that deep relationship with the IT community. It's getting the educators, the researchers, the end users to understand that security message and understand the cool sort of features that exist and feel protected, but also making it seamless, right? I think the average user, the average student especially, does not think through all the security measures. And, we talk about our essential workers, especially now in this back to school season. I mean, we even have customers who are, because some students will remain remote within their respective countries, right? And need to be able to collaborate with their peers in a secure and safe manner. That has been the catalyst to move to M365. And so, I think our security message speaks loud and clear, and our IT community understands it. The continuous challenge is making sure it trickles down to the user level in a way that is continues to make people proud of the decision, the platform that their institution has chosen. And, while not needing to understand all the technicalities, understand that that's really our key differentiator, that we're not trying to just fight for functionality in this tool or that tool, but there's all these pieces that really come together and create a secure experience. And, people talk about essential workers, and, I always joke, but in all seriousness, give your IT admin, a pat on the back, because the work that they've done to help students and educators stay safe during these very rocky times. There's a lot of work that goes behind it that is the product of their planning, their blood, sweat, and tears, but also I think some of the amazing security tools that we have built into all of our M365 suite. It's always nice to spread that message and know that we're on the right side of keeping folks safe.
Absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right to point out just how critical it's been, all of those folks in every discipline in IT, to help make the magic behind the scenes happen. As much as we might want to all pretend, that it's you press one button and everything is perfect and set up exactly what you need and accounts for all the challenges, it really is magic because of the work that they're doing and that they've been doing, at a running pace to keep up with the situation. So I'm totally with you on that, and proud to to kind of celebrate the work those folks have been doing. So based on all of this, I'm curious in your experience, like, do you have guidance as people think about change management out of this? Like, how do you best help? And there's both the preparation and then the execution for students and teachers as they go through these transitions, either to hybrid or to fully remote, or to go from, summer to back into school that is in one of those states. What's kind of the best practices that you'd say that helps make that change happen?
Microsoft recently released a paper called sort of reimagining education reimagined, and I wanted to mention it because I think a lot of my inspiration comes from that recent publication. Because it really talks about deep learning, right? And I think that all of us are now inundated with new information, new tools, new way of work overnight. We live in a world that's so much different than the world in like February 2020. I think that those change management frame, it first starts with really focusing on the essential pieces of knowledge and tasks and saying, how do you really create time for students to have deep learning? And create that learning zone in that quiet space. And I think you can break that down into different pieces, right? Of even the experience of how they log in to their learning management system or your collaboration platform of choice. We hope it's Teams, right? But in sort of what that experience is like when they log in, and then how their day is sort of parceled out to really go deep on certain topics and to have dedicated time to collaborate, but also have dedicated time to really explore on their own and really have that quiet time, right? Having that quiet time is so important. I think it's something that happened naturally in an in-person classroom that's so much more difficult to manage within a hybrid learning space. So I think managing the day to focus on time for deep learning, time for intentional breaks and pauses, time for togetherness, but also really focusing in on, again, the different learning styles. Like I mentioned a bit before of, no longer can it be the loudest student, right? Or the student who has already all the knowledge or has their hand raised all the time. I think the traditional way of measuring student success also needs to adapt. And I think that's what the power of some of our platforms do, right? Because it helps bring in that data around, well, there's other ways your students like to learn or interacting with the content that perhaps you couldn't have seen if there wasn't any technology really embedded in the classroom.
Yeah, the white paper you mentioned, let's make sure we'll put it in the show notes. So if you're listening right now, it'll be in there for you to go find that and download it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing resource that I've continued to learn a lot from. So the listeners really enjoy that.
Yep. It was a great conversation, Erdina, and I think there are a lot of questions that we still want to ask. But in the interest of time, I would like to quickly summarize and ask you, what were your top 3 takeaways or do's and don'ts that you learned during this remote learning transition experience that you can share with our listeners? And there might be some who are going through this journey themselves right now, and it can prove to be really valuable to them.
Sure. I think the first is that remote learning is not just meetings and files, right? The tools are just pieces, they're ingredients, and that our biggest challenge is helping educators to create a sense of culture and togetherness with the tools, right? But not just leaning on the tools alone. I would say the second being that thinking of the M365 tools as that virtual classroom and OneDrive being that virtual file cabinet, right? Of helping folks to take pride in their OneDrive. And also really, there's so many new great functionalities that have come out within the past couple of years. And I think to reintroduce them to the new OneDrive and the role that it plays in helping them get through this pandemic. And I would say the third being focus time for deep learning, to recognize how do we really zero in on what's essential and allow students to have less distractions to really focus on what they need to learn, and also more self-led learning. So using the power of OneDrive, less barriers between information to really give students the autonomy to go through a lesson plan and sort of lead their own journey of how they're interacting with content and really putting the educator in the position of being more of a facilitator of knowledge versus always the, or maybe a guide, right? Versus the traditional sort of facilitator.
Well, that's awesome, Erdina. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. We are out of time, except for one last question. We always like to do one fun question on the show, and we'll just go around and everyone will answer on that. There's no points awarded, so don't worry about that. Essentially, this one kind of comes to us as kind of a throwback, looking back at when times maybe felt a little simpler, a little different. And I'm curious to hear, for each of you, did you have a favorite cartoon growing up? And if so, what was it? I'll go first just to kind of like claim something so you guys can't claim it. But, growing up for me, one of the things that was absolutely just a cartoon I had to see every week was the Ghostbusters cartoon. I had seen the movie. I was young. It was the 80s. I loved seeing more and more of those stories and really enjoyed it. And I couldn't tell you anything that happens in it except for the fact that Slimer, the green ghost from the movie, has a very big role in the TV show. But honestly, I couldn't tell you anything beyond that. But I remember that was always a priority for me, able to see that cartoon. And I thought about it a lot as a kid, making sure I was able to see it. Ankita, do you want to go next?
There were multiple. I think one that I can still see actually, because it was a favorite at that time as well, was Tom and Jerry.
Oh yeah,
I really, really liked it. Like I had merchandise, I had t-shirts and all.
Really? You were fully invested.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and my younger sister is like 6 years younger to me, so she was my Jerry. Apart from her, she was my favorite cartoon, but then Tom and Jerry was pretty much very close. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
That's great. And Erdina, how about you? What did you grow up with? What was the big cartoon for you?
Yeah, so I grew up with both of those. Those were really good options. I would have to say that the one that sticks out to me the most is and this is gonna send waves. Sailor Moon, a big cult.
Oh yeah.
And I've actually been re-watching it. And Sailor Moon at the time, right? You're just watching it, and it's all very girly and pink and sparkly, and it's great entertainment. But rewatching it now as an adult, there were so many great messages in there. It's so funny. Like all the Sailor Scouts are like, why is Sailor Moon the leader? Like she's super flaky. She like has, and everyone else always wants to be the leader. And people are like, no, like she is the leader. Like we have to just support her and let her grow into her own. And then all the girls have their different personalities. And it's a really great message for young girls and boys. So
I love that. That's such a great one. I honestly, I have not seen that in so long. I'm going to have to put them both. I've seen a lot of Tom and Jerry because my youngest son, Tom, loves Tom and Jerry, and the name thing goes really well for him. But I haven't seen Sailor Moon in so long. Maybe I'll introduce it to the kids. That's a great one. Okay, that's really good. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Erdina. Some of our audience is going to be excited to find out more and to learn more. So how could they actually go and find out more about you? LinkedIn, Twitter, what's the best place to catch up on all the things you're thinking, maybe your thoughts on the latest Sailor Moon episode?
Definitely Twitter for that one. Luckily, there's not too many Erdinas in the world, at least live in the US. Most of them live in Indonesia, actually. So yeah, if you look up Erdina F on Twitter, you'll find me. And then LinkedIn for all the product updates and all the great things I'm doing as a specialist. But then definitely Twitter for my commentary on Sailor Moon and all other. I'm a very big Last Airbender fan and Avatar. That's a new.
Yeah. No, totally. Right. And Korra and absolutely. Yeah. Great. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been awesome to have you on. And we look forward to hearing great things soon.
All right. It was so much fun. Thanks, guys.
So before we jump into our special topic for this month, we would want to remind you that Microsoft Ignite is just around the corner. It's less than 30 days. Microsoft Ignite this year is a complimentary digital event. It's between 22nd to 24th September, and there are a lot of sessions for you to learn more about OneDrive, Teams, Microsoft 365, and all other products from Microsoft. Jason and I have a session that is overview of OneDrive, and so does our peers who've already come on the show. So if you want to learn more about external sharing, sync, migration, security and compliance, about OneDrive and about all our other wonderful products, please log into microsoft.com/ignite and check out the amazing sessions that we have available for you in 1 month. So, Jason, what do we have today for our special topic?
I wanted to talk about this all summer long because I think it's so important, and it's something that we've talked a lot in the team about. And that's kind of about recharging, right? It's kind of about recognizing how important it is to recharge. And I've been thinking about it a lot because here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're about to enter the end of summer and the beginning of the school year, the end of a lot of vacations, and maybe somewhat normally vacations, but this year has been a little bit different as we deal with all the things going on with COVID and whatnot.
Yeah. So by recharge, you mean like taking a vacation, relaxing, taking a few days off?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I think you were just doing that, visiting some friends in Eastern Washington, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't take any day off because it was impromptu decision. It was a surprise for them. So we were just landing at their place, but I didn't realize how much we needed it. And be it sitting on their porch, just having tea and coffee, or having a picnic by the lake, well, cautious and socially distant picnic, it was so much needed. And really, you feel recharged and rejuvenated after those warm, sunny afternoons that you've spent outside with your friends and family. So it was fantastic.
Absolutely. And I'm so jealous that you got away. I'm so glad you got away to do that. And it's interesting you mentioned, you didn't take vacation days, you just did it over the weekend. But I think even that's important. And one of the themes I wanted to land with folks today, and something we've talked about internal to our team, is that it's actually recharging is more than just enduring our situation. There's a lot of energy that we all put into kind of getting through things that are in front of us, especially when it's something we don't want to do or is not great or is not fun or is undesirable in some ways. We kind of put in a lot of energy to actually push through. But it's important to recognize that that's not what gets you to the next level with those things. It's not what helps you kind of move through. Yes, grit is super critical for being able to deliver on tough stuff, but it's really important to also recognize that each and every one of us is someone who needs to recharge, who needs to take time and step back and actually focus on those things. And the example I always think about is we've all experienced the sleepless night where you just struggle to sleep. Your mind is going. You may be laying down. You may be on the softest covers. The gentlest pillow, the perfect temperature, just the right air kind of coming through, and you could still lay there and have your mind go a mile a minute. So resting isn't enough. It's really about recharging. And I think that's important because like what you did this weekend, I thought was a great example of intentionally creating space where you were going to be doing things that recharge you. You were spending time with people you care about. And, I was just thinking as you were telling us about that, sitting on the porch and having a nice cup of tea or going to the lake and having a picnic, like what a wonderful way to kind of disconnect from the hubbub of all the things we have to get through.
Yeah. And I feel all of us know about it, all of us realize it, but it's not as simple to do it, and especially in this condition. Like previously, I feel, when you walk back from office or when you drive back from office, there is a quick, small, temporary disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
But now, when your office is just between your upper floor and down floor of like underground of your apartment, or if it is just between walls, the simple disconnect is missing. And with so many limitations around as well, you are sometimes not sure what to do, where to go, how to force yourself to get disconnected from your work. And those sleepless nights, yes, I've not faced so many of them in the earlier years, I think.
Yeah.
The ones that I'm going through this time, and most of them are on Sunday nights, and my Monday gets like totally
that much harder, right?
Yeah, that much harder.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, because it's one of those things where if you look at professional sports, professional athletes, Olympians, they're actually trained and coached on how to do recharging, how to take time away, that it takes as much effort to recharge and to rebuild yourself as it takes getting to that peak performance they might have just had on display. And we don't all necessarily think about it that way. And to your point, right now, it feels like we never do because it's, your peak performance is on the couch, on the laptop, on your Teams call, and then you walk 10 feet to, go to the kitchen.
Yeah. Like, what would be quick tips for us? Is it just about taking vacations or is it more?
Well, I think vacations absolutely can play a big role in that. And I think one of the things this year we're all struggling with is so many vacations have been disrupted. I know for a lot of folks that getting on a plane is the first step to anything really being a vacation for them.
Yeah.
So absolutely vacations can be part of that, and you got to go plan those things and be thoughtful. But I actually thought maybe it'd be good to give some quick tips that you could do at home that you could put into production today, as we say, whether or not you actually have vacation time to take. The first one is really kind of being intentional about creating times when you're not working. To that thing on the Sunday nights, one of the things that so many of us are struggling with, and the data is starting to show very cleanly, is work is seeped into all hours. If I don't have a 30-minute commute anymore, I might be starting work 30 minutes earlier and ending it 30 minutes later. And not only do I lose that transition you were just talking about, that's going to come up again in a second, but I also am just doing more. And when all of us are doing more, it's often in a collaborative way creating more for each and every one of us. And it kind of seeps across those borders. So really figuring out ways to create those boundaries that are useful for you. As a manager, I think about this a lot. I need to help my team have boundaries so that they know how to kind of, feel safe about creating that structure so that they're able to get away and, do their best, because when they do come back, they've been able to recharge. Another one, and this one's been really, really impactful for me. Your mileage may vary, but I think it's so powerful, is to really think about how you're creating your own cycle on a daily basis. Whether that's a morning thing or a noon thing or a night thing. I know not everybody's a morning person like I am, but for me, it really is about making sure that I get up at the same time, I go work out, I have some time alone to prepare myself for the day. Because once I do that, it's a lot easier for me to hit the day running and to feel good about it because I've created the time to attend to those things. Now, you might talk about some of those as self-care. I think, exercise is absolutely a great example of self-care. But all of those things are really about making sure that I've got structure around that, and that cycle is kind of durable and repetitive and grounds me in a great way. If every day you're jumping out of bed and you're doing email before your brain is fully booted, you're not really creating that space, and you're not helping yourself separate out on each of those things. You're not able to recharge because it's just a blur at that point. And then the third one, kind of back to your point about, kind of the space that you're in, is about figuring out ways to cross thresholds often. So the simple example is this. Hopefully, I'm not the only one who's walked into a room and immediately thought, I can't remember why I walked in, right? I don't remember what I'm here for. And there's a whole psychological aspect to how we consider thresholds in our brain, where we dump or load data as appropriate. And what happens is that when you give yourself that chance, that space, your mind is able to reset. It's no longer working that must-do list of 7 items that it's trying to hold on to really, really tightly. It's letting yourself kind of free up. And that's a big part of letting yourself recharge. And that could be as fantastic as getting out there and going and do something physical, after a meeting, going for a walk or a run or a row or whatever your particular outdoor kind of sport is. But even if you can't get out, right? If you know that in 15 minutes you got that next call, just walking around your house, going into another room, spending some time doing something there can really help create that threshold that allows your brain to kind of go, okay, let me step away from that. Let me recharge a bit. Let me be in a condition by which I'm relaxing the tension that's existing in it. And so those 3 things, being intentional about creating times when you're not working and really creating structure on that, creating a cycle that's dependable and durable, that you're going to get these moments and you're going to reinvest in them. And then, of course, making sure you cross thresholds, making sure you find ways to disconnect and step away so it's not one continuous blur. Those can all help you really kind of find ways to start recharging or create limits on how much your energy is being sapped across all the tough work we're all doing these days.
Yeah, I feel it really resonates with me. At least I've cautiously done 2 out of 3. I think I'm still struggling with creating a cycle. Mm-hmm. Now, while you were talking, I was trying to remember, and I think I still on most days jump from my bed to email, or jump from my bed to news. That's how I start my day, looking at news, which also creates panic and anxiety. So I don't think it's a good thing to do. But yeah, I think these are really helpful tips, and I'll try to work towards creating a cycle as well. But the other 2, intentional about creating some time and crossing the threshold, just get up, walk around, go to the kitchen, go to the patio. I have seen it really makes a difference, and making sure that you're not attached to some devices. Like, I like playing Sudoku, or words with friends and all. Previously, it used to be all on the phone. Now I bought a book, which was the Sudoku book, so that I can sit and play on a book and stay kind of a little bit away from the device. So
That's great. I think you just came up with one of our next fun questions where we ask people about new hobbies they've taken up and how they're setting themselves out. That's a great idea. I mean, that being able to disconnect from devices and engage in something physical, right, that changes the mode of your interaction with the world, I think is a great way to break things up and help people get that space. Now, I know we can't help everyone with all the burdens they're facing, but hopefully these things and just sitting back and thinking about what you're doing to help yourself break out of these cycles and allow your body and your mind to recharge is a useful thing to consider and to talk about with your own teams, your managers, the folks you work with, and really think about how each of you are creating that space and being intentional about it, because that's the best way for us to get through this together. I think you'll see a lot of change that you can have out of that simply makes your days easier, simpler, and more enjoyable.
I really like this conversation. I think considering I've been through the struggle, I imagine not everyone, but a handful of people must be still going through it. And this is really valuable. Disconnecting during this time is such a pain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the version of this that I actually wrote to the team a couple of months ago actually goes into the sports psychology aspects of it, where one of the things that they see Olympians and like high level like NBA and NFL players struggle with is making sure that they take as much energy and time focused on how they recharge as they do and how they perform. Because the thing that gives you longevity is an ability to relax and stop and step away.
True. And I think, in the general normal atmosphere, travel becomes the most easiest way of taking that break and recharging and rejuvenating.
It forces you to.
Yeah. I mean, you can drive down somewhere, you can fly out somewhere. It does not take that much of time and energy just to make sure you are doing something to disconnect. To your point that flying somewhere or driving somewhere, you need to plan excessively during this time, which I think is creating more paranoia. But I feel you just need to, push yourself across that phase and even do those small things, be it a drive or a walk or just sit in your patio or on the terrace.
Right. I'm glad you went.
It was a great time off for us. Thank you to our guest, Erdina Francillon, for participating in today's podcast. I feel the discussion was really valuable for all our customers who are transitioning into remote learning. To learn more about OneDrive and the latest developments, please follow our tech community blog at aka.ms/OneDrive/blog.
And please do send us your questions and feedback. You can reach us on Twitter at OneDrive, @Jasmo, and @Ankita_Kirti21. And definitely visit our show page for links, resources, and more at aka.ms/syncup. That's SYNCUP. Subscribe to and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoy SynCup, tell others what you've learned from the show, whether it's how to secure your company's intel or the best summertime beverage. Word of mouth is still the best way for people to learn about new podcasts and new information. And if you're curious about other cool shows by Microsoft, go to aka.ms/Microsoft/podcasts. There's something for everyone.